Alright, welcome everyone. So Heroscape here today, coming at you with a quick review on how AdeptiCon went this year. And with me today is...
Me!
Who are you?
Danrad.
Danrad! Yeah, he came with me to AdeptiCon, so he's going to share some of his thoughts on how he had fun on AdeptiCon weekend. So a couple things to cover for AdeptiCon are maps, the formats, and then just overall just general experience, as feedback for Renegade, because this was their first time doing AdeptiCon, which is kind of their second major event outside of Gen Con from last year. So here are some thoughts. So first up, we're going to be talking about maps and how the maps went. Overall, I think the maps were actually pretty good. There was a good spread. Renegade had picked a couple maps that they had previously used at Gen Con. They had picked a couple contest winners. There were some contests that were run from map makers of the community. And then there were some commission maps. And so overall, I think there was a decent array of maps. Some of them less good than others. But all things considered, I was pretty happy. I will say in general, though, I think going forward, Renegade should, I would say, more involved in getting community feedback and for map selection. Again, the maps were decent enough for AdeptiCon. AdeptiCon's the second largest convention event that they've run. They ran the Gen Con events last year, and so this is really kind of the next big one. I just think in general, maps make a huge difference. And so, for the most part, I think the maps were decent enough. But it felt like some of the maps just, were lacking. And so I think they're going to have to put a little bit more effort, I think, in truly having, I don't want to say professional, but involved members of the community that understand map making at a competitive level and more involved. And I don't know that they have that at Renegade right now. Now, they've gotten it from the community. The maps themselves are from the community. But just because a contest winner, or just because the maps are used in the past, or just because the map's commissioned by a good map maker, doesn't necessarily make the map worthwhile at a highly competitive event. Again, we all learn, and Renegade's learning, but I think for Renegade, with Gen Con especially around the corner here, and just for future events, highly competitive with lots of prizes and world championships and store championships and all these things, I think it is important that there be probably a bit more focused effort on getting truly highly competitive maps. That said, Danrad, any thoughts on the maps? Which was your favorite?
I liked the Washia's Ascent.
Oh, you liked it. Okay.
Because I played a Washia, so she was super strong.
Okay, all right. Well, there you go. He did play a Washia, and he had a lot of fun. He had.
And I played on the Washia's actual map, so I was actually pretty strong on it. Yep. He got some big rolls with the Washia during the weekend, which was good. And in our shorts, we covered that, which was pretty cool. He got some 3 and 4 skull rolls. So well done, buddy. All right. So that's it for maps. Actually, just really quick, aside from maps, a big factor into how this event went at Adepticon was glyphs. I think Renegade made a huge mistake in the way that they chose glyphs. They said, hey, on every single map, we're going to be picking Dagmar and the Hawkland, the heal +3 glyph, for competitive balance. Now, that was their reasoning. Unfortunately, not all maps are created equal, and unfortunately, not all glyphs are created equal. And true competitive Heroscape players understand that glyphs have a massive, massive impact on how you play games, how you play maps, and how you build your armies. And for the weekend, I was very cognizant of the fact that round 1 would be massive every single game, because you could always guarantee, or if you lost initiative, you could always play for the initiative switch. And so it made games potentially very swingy very early, when you know that the initiative +8 is on the board. Additionally, it makes the heal glyph is so incredibly strong. It's such a strong glyph, especially for bonding melee. It makes Frost Claws that much better, because they can advance against range, and even while they're taking pot shots, they can just go grab the heal glyph really quick and heal back up. And so more often than not, I just avoided it entirely and went and burned the glyph. And so it became completely useless, half the time in a lot of my games, because rather than trying to use it, I just burned it so that my opponent couldn't use it. And then sometimes where I did try to keep it there to make it relevant, it actually ended up hurting me, because
I didn't time it right, and my ally my enemy ended up getting it, and it's just a very powerful glyph, and it is not equal to Dagmar, and it's a temporary glyph, so it's only once, and so the glyphs themselves just have way too strong of an impact on the game, because competitive balance, having the same two glyphs doesn't actually create competitive balance. I would say actually it creates more imbalance, because it shifts the way that you play maps and the way that you build armies a lot more in a different direction. For example, on one of my armies, I grabbed Eldgrim, and I did that intentionally because I always wanted to burn the heal glyph. If the heal glyph isn't on every map, then I probably don't throw Eldgrim in there. I probably switch it out for maybe some other unit. And it doesn't feel like I have to do that, right? And so anyway, that's feedback for Renegade. Make sure that you get more feedback from the community on competitive glyphs, and specifically for maps. Map-specific glyphs are incredibly important in Heroscape. Having random glyphs is not a good idea. Truly having a glyph selected for maps and different map features is really, really important. Some glyphs can really break maps. Some glyphs really help balance out maps that have some wonky features, like Awashia's Ascent. Could have been great for a Valda +2 glyph, right? Having +2 movement on that map would have been incredibly good to help scale that height against range. And so there's just some glyphs that can really help maps features that, otherwise would not be easily workaroundable. So anyway, that's kind of my feeling on the maps. All right, so now we're going to talk about formats at Adepticon. Now, Adepticon formats were kind of all the same, but Danny, I'm proud of him, said that every format he wanted to try something new. So is that what you did, buddy? Yep, so every single army was different, right?
Mm-hmm.
So nicely done. He was better than me. I did a lot of copycatting. I ran bears pretty much the entire weekend. And so that was just the nature of the builds, and currently the meta with Renegade. Is the meta is built around bears, and right now the formats themselves are built around bears, which is unfortunate in some senses. The meta is shifting. Having the formats consistent does allow the meta to shift as you introduce more characters, so the meta has shifted, and bugs are now definitely a reasonable pick for a lot of these armies. I think part of the issue that Renegade is running into is they are just leaving the format the same to allow the meta to shift again, which is fine when you're introducing new characters as much as you are. But when the bears continue to be the top of the meta and continue to be as strong as they are, because they're really the only new bonding unit, 5 activations, then it's just basically keeping the top armies the same. For example, if you dropped the point limit down to 400, or if you increased the point limit to 600 or something like that, bears would still be strong, but the problem is that you'd actually be forced to add more components to those armies. And so those armies then would not prove out to be just solely bear armies. In fact, you might actually say to yourself, man, the bear armies in a 600 point format only take up, a third of the points. Therefore, actually, I might be able to fit in a bunch of other pieces that can still counter bears. And so I think Renegade probably needs to start messing around with some of their format points, and I really hope they do for Gen Con, because my next point is that for a convention, Adepticon is a smaller convention, but in general, for a convention, when you're running events at a gaming convention, people are going there for your game. I was there for Heroscape. I was not there for any other events, right? There was nothing else that I did that weekend. And it was only one event per day. Now that was, a $60 ticket to come to the weekend at Adepticon, and then it was an additional $10 for each event, and then, plus all the parking and gas and hotel, right? I mean, it adds up, right? But only to play one event per day. Now that was still fun. I had a great time, but I think it's within Renegade's best interest, I'll say, to really allow the Heroscape community who's committed to the events to participate in as much Heroscape in a weekend as possible. Continue to do the how to play events, the battle box events. I think that's great for new players, but really there should be a morning slot for an event and an afternoon slot. Now, in a perfect world, you could do a morning, afternoon, and evening. That's what we do at ScapeCon and other conventions, where you get a 8 a.m. start, a 1 p.m. start, and a 5 p.m. start, and you go all day. That's probably a bit too much for Renegade to run out the gate, but I think absolutely there should be 2 events per day starting around 9 or 10 a.m. and then around 2 or 3 p.m. going till about 8 or 9 and filling out your full day. That's what people are there for. And so AdeptiCon, I think, just like Gen Con last year, ran into that same issue where 1 event per day just isn't enough or is just lacking for people who are going there just to play Heroscape. And so that would be my feedback for Renegade is really dive into one, starting to shift the meta, starting to shift the formats to help with the meta. And especially if you're going to be running and start running multiple events, and especially you have to switch up the formats if you're going to be running multiple events. And I think you could have a lot of fun and getting people excited by running events that are just only slightly different. They don't even have to be, all kind of crazy events. I mean, you could literally do 1 time slot in the morning where it's contemporary 500 10 figure or something like that, and then you could do in the afternoon slot contemporary 600 20 figure, right? I mean, you could just mess around with the points and figures, but you could keep contemporary on like a Thursday. You could keep all-time uniques on a Friday, and then Saturday you could do all-time anything, right? So like you could have each individual day to a different type of format, but then different points and figures, or you could mix it up and just do whatever throughout the day. Either way, I think you just have to commit more to events at a convention. And so AdeptiCon is a smaller convention, but even then, we had 16 plus at almost every event. Other than the Sunday event, which I think was 9 or 10, we had 16 plus at every single event, and over 26, I believe, at the championship event on that Saturday at AdeptiCon. Now, if you were to go online beforehand and check tickets, or if you were to go to the Battle Network and check to see who signed up, you would have only seen like 10 or 11. So that meant there was a ton of people there that at the time found out about Heroscape, got excited, got in, logged in, got signed up, and played right there, right then. And so I just imagine, if you can get a bunch of people rolling out of bed, not planning on playing Heroscape, signing up that same day, then imagine how many more people would have come if they had known that Heroscape was kind of an all-day thing. Because talking to Mega Silver, for example, he even knew a few people that didn't bother to come to AdeptiCon just because it was only one-day events, and it's really hard to, put away the time and the money just for one event per day. Because it is a lot. It is a lot. And so that was just my perspective. I think Renegade can take that from the community as good feedback to consider for Gen Con coming up. I know they plan on releasing the events here within the next month, I believe. So hopefully we can get some updates on some good maps, glyphs, and formats. Now's the time to share my overall feeling and experience from the weekend at AdeptiCon. Ganrad, let's start with you, buddy. What did you think about the whole weekend of Heroscape?
I thought it was really fun, and I enjoyed all the games, even if I lost or won.
Awesome. And tell the folks some of your favorite memories of that weekend.
My favorite part was when I had Isamu left, and I killed Johnny Shotgun in 2 turns.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. It was the last day on Sunday, the last event, his last game, and it was a really close game. Your last figure versus his last figure, and it was Isamu versus Johnny Shotgun, the mano-y-mano, and in 2 attacks, assassinated Johnny Shotgun for the win. That was an awesome moment. So his Isamu did some work, better than some of my Isamus. So well done, Danrad. For me, overall, my weekend was a big success. I was able to go 16-3. Had a really good showing over the weekend. That dice bowl did me well. The dice going back to the old Valkyrie dice was good. But no, I think overall the games were competitive. As you've seen, I've started to post some of the games, and you'll see over the next weeks. I'll continue to post those in Hexagon events games. And I think just overall the experience was really good. It was good to get out to the community. It was good to see Renegade again. It was good to see Heroscape out at a convention getting excitement. It was good to see a lot of new players and new faces. I felt like there was a lot of new people that I hadn't met before, which was awesome, and people who are excited about the game coming back. And it was good to talk to Renegade and see just how successful they are when they're selling at these conventions. And the fact that AdeptiCon had such a good showing for the Heroscape events, I thought was a really good sign. And I think that in the future, AdeptiCon can be another, strong secondary showing for, convention events outside of Gen Con. So I would say for those of you that missed it, it was a great experience. I mean, I got to walk away with another Paint Master. Last year, I got a Paint Master on a random giveaway at Gen Con, and this year, because I got second in the main event, I got a Paint Master here as well. So some really good walkaways. Obviously we got prizes with the promo, but not as big prizes as Gen Con. Gen Con was a pretty big deal with Heroscape coming back for the first time at Gen Con. So I anticipate Gen Con continue to be the main place for prizes. But overall, I was just impressed with the experience. I do think there's room for improvement, even though it is a smaller convention. I still think that there needs to be some improvement there on Renegade's part to continue to make it worth it for Heroscapers to commit to a full weekend of Heroscape and really make it out. So this video goes down as a review for AdeptiCon 2025. Hopefully you found that informative, interesting, and hopefully I didn't talk too long-winded. I tend to do that. So anyway, if you've made it to the end, welcome. All right. Any other last words, Dan Rad?
I'm good.
You're good? All right. Cool, man. All right. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys next time.